The 2025 Volvo EX30 is Volvo's new little entry-level crossover here. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talk about the kind of efficiency you can expect and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And so, as far as the EX30, well, this is an interesting little thing, especially this one in moss yellow, but it's a very interesting combination. So it's this crazy fast little crossover, but could be mistaken for a hot hatch, honestly. And it's even smaller than you might be expecting it to be. It's over 8 inches shorter actually than the already small Volvo XC40. And as far as, if we are talking about hot hatches, this is actually 2 inches or so shorter than a Volkswagen Golf R or GTI. Now it is about 3.5 inches taller, but it's actually shorter than that. So to me, this classifies as a hot hatch, especially because of the performance. We'll talk more about that later and how this fits into the world around it here. But as far as the styling of the EX30 here, so it's very bold, but you know, I think it actually does fit with what Volvo has been going for recently. We've seen similar styling language with the EX90, and this is something, you know, we'll be seeing with other Volvos as well. And it's, you know, nice with those very futuristic looking headlights, the Thor's hammer LED headlights up front there that you have, and the blocked off grille. You know, I think it's actually a nice look up front here, and coming down to the sides, we have these bold 19-inch wheels that look really cool actually, and I think, again, kind of add to the sportiness of this one in particular. We also have a two-tone roof combination here with a black roof here on these, which is cool, and a nice big panoramic roof, which is another nice touch here, so really kind of accentuates that two-tone look. And then going out to the back there, it's, you know, a very cool look back there as well. You have, you know, this signature Volvo taillights there that, you know, have a modern take for these new generation EVs. And, you know, but it is, again, just, it's so small, so compact. That's going to be great, especially for city living, tight spaces, all those types of things, where this vehicle's small size is really going to give it an advantage over some of the larger go-to EVs in this segment, even stuff that's similarly priced. This does have a more compact nature to it. And overall, I think that it's a really fun little look. So for the interior of the EX30, this is an interesting one. So, you know, as you can see, it's very sparse. You know, the Swedes are known for minimalism, but really in this car, it was done in the name of cost savings, because the initial idea for this vehicle and the way it's available in Europe is that there is a low cost one, and here in the States, it was supposed to be $35,000. Because of the crazy car market here in the past year or so, they have for now put that version on the back burner and only given us this loaded high performance version that is about $48,000. So the sparseness, you know, isn't quite as acceptable at this price point. But let's get into all the individual components here. So the first thing here, sitting down in these seats, we have some really good seats. I do really like them a lot. I love this wool blend that you have here on these. You can also get some interesting recycled textiles, and this whole car is very eco-friendly. They say that about 95% of the whole vehicle can be recycled whenever the car's life is over. And that's, you know, why they've really gone to great lengths to make everything, again, very sustainable. Even the wool is responsibly sourced. So very heavy-handed in, you know, that whole component of it. And you can see the interesting plastics, or, you know, not even plastic, but just different types of materials here that are able to be recycled. But the wool is actually a really nice switch from the usual leather you see in other vehicles or vinyl. And yeah, they're just super comfortable. There are heated seats here. Unfortunately, there's no ventilation though in any EX30. Again, $48,000. You kind of expect that in most vehicles that this competes with. So, you know, that's just the beginning of the shortcomings here of this vehicle, which I'll discuss as far as, you know, the interior goes. But it also just, you know, one knob to control everything as far as the adjustments. Takes a little getting used to, but not the end of the world. And also just, you know, again, very comfortable seats. So I love that. Now the steering wheel is also very nice and attractive. Now it has some really nice metal on it as well, like thick, heavy metal, and that's beautiful. And as long as it hasn't been sitting in the sun, it's great. But here in the middle of summer reviewing this, I have scorched my thumb muscles multiple times grabbing this wheel for the first time, and getting branded by the steering wheel pretty much. And, you know, but aside from that, I do really like it. I just wish that maybe they would have tapered it in here so you had a little more leather by your actual touch points. But anyway, just a few buttons on it, very simple as far as that goes. And you also have a driver monitoring sensor, which I will discuss the driver monitoring monitoring stuff once they're out on the highway. I have some thoughts about that as well. But anyway, you will see there's also no gauge cluster. That was also done for cost savings. And I mean, you can't really blame them with the best-selling Teslas in the world, you know, all not having a gauge cluster. You know, Volvo figured they can get away with it as well. And, you know, we will see if everyone, you know, is willing to go along with this for Volvo like they have for Tesla. But I have found myself over the course of a week here missing the gauge cluster. I'm a traditionalist, what can I say? But, you know, having to look over to the middle to see my speed and even see, you know, if my turn signal is on, I don't love that. It's just, I mean, you could do a tiny little display like many of the others do that also are trying to, you know, save money and still give you that information. And for a company like Volvo that is so focused on safety, making you look away, I mean, yes, it's higher up than maybe a gauge cluster could be, but looking away, you know, into the middle of the road here in order to see your speed is just kind of uncharacteristic for them, in my opinion. But moving over to this screen, it's a 12.3-inch touchscreen, so a little bit on the small side these days. I mean, it's completely sufficient for a car like this. It does everything you need to do. It's nice and high resolution, and thankfully it does have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which is a key differentiator from some of the other low-cost stuff like Chevy Equinox EV, which does not have that. So I do like the smartphone integration. That's great. And, you know, all the other stuff works fine. You do have the Google Play Store, Google Maps built in, all that stuff, which is fine. But it doesn't have satellite radio. There's no Sirius XM here. So you're stuck with either, again, your smartphone streaming, whatever apps you download, or just regular FM AM radio. So, you know, you can download the Sirius XM app and run that through CarPlay, but you're just going to be dependent on a data connection instead of actual satellite like you are with a native Sirius XM solution. But regardless, other than that, it's fine. Now, there are other comical things, like this vehicle is an early production one. This one's actually built in China. All of the US ones that are actually going to be for sale, I believe, at least all the ones now, are going to be coming from Belgium. So this one's a bit of a unicorn to be driving a Chinese-built EV in America right now. But you can see that it's currently displaying temperature in Celsius, but then whenever I press on it, then it will show me the actual Fahrenheit there. You know, little funny quirks like that that I've noticed here throughout the course of the week. Not a big deal. The other thing, though, about this screen that's kind of annoying is that if you are someone who's an enthusiast, you know, the drive mode is buried about 3 or 4 taps away here under the car status menu. That's how you change your steering feel and other things as well. And that's also where you turn off like the lane keep assist system, which automatically defaults to on at every key cycle. I don't love that either. And the fact that, again, all that's buried away is definitely not ideal. But, you know, it's manageable. Now, there's also like no volume knob, so you have to press on this little volume selector and then either use the slider or press the plus and minus to change that. You do also have up and down buttons here on the steering wheel that do the same thing. But I don't know. I really question, I mean, maybe it all adds up over time, but, you know, what's the cost of a volume knob? What's the cost of, you know, 1 or 2 extra buttons for shortcuts to certain things? You do strangely have a shortcut button up here in the headliner for your defrost. That's, I think it's the first time I've seen that in a vehicle. But anyway, this screen is actually fine. I thought I'd actually be more annoyed with it during the week than I was. So take that as you will, but to me, it was livable, but not ideal. Now, beyond that, there's really not much here. I do like the design of the air vents, though, I will say, and also this different, it looks like it would be the same kind of wool, but it's a different kind of textile that's very hard that we have here on the dash. We do have some nice ambient lighting at night in these. And then coming down, you will see you have a wireless phone charger here, and it's a really well done charger, because first, it's, you know, mostly vertical, which certainly helps, but it has these really great little rubberized holders, and because of that, my iPhone 15 Pro didn't move an inch whenever I had it in there, and it was doing reliable wireless charging the entire time. The only shortcoming is it's not a cooled or ventilated wireless charging pad, so my phone overheated in there a few times doing the wireless charging. That's something that you often get with other wireless chargers as well. Some of the best ones, though, are cooled these days, but that, of course, would cost extra money, and so we don't have that here in this. But, you know, otherwise, the design is good. And then you also do have very interesting storage spaces here in this vehicle. So you have, you know, this nice little shelf, I guess you can call it, on the top, but that opens up, and that's where you'll find 2 USB-C jacks and, you know, a little bit of extra depth there if you'd like. And also, this top part, though, is magnetized. So, like, my metal hinge on my sunglasses case actually stays stuck to this little hinge in the thing. It actually kind of holds it it in place, which was a fun little touch I didn't expect. Otherwise, coming up here, you do have 2 retractable cup holders, and it's nice they do get out of the way. The only compromise is that means you don't have an opening center armrest, and I'll get into that in a second. But you know, the cup holders are still pretty cool, and if you don't need the actual cup holders themselves, you can slide that part back, which is cool. And you also see the other cost-cutting thing in this area, that we only have 2 window switches in a 4-door car. And unfortunately, the button to even select rear switches is this capacitive touch one that isn't very bright. So especially here in direct sunlight, I have no idea if I'm actually selecting it or not, unless I just keep playing with the switches to see if it's working. At least have a little mercy on us and make that a physical button, so I actually know I'm engaging the rear windows before I sit there and play with the switch. You know, it just... you know, the cost of 2 extra window switches. The funny thing is there are 2 window switches there for the backseat occupants, but up front here, you only have those 2. Now, if you drive by yourself all the time, or you never have anyone in the back seat, you know, whatever. But for me, having, you know, a kid, I'm always putting the rear windows down, and that is an actual annoyance that I had to deal with on a daily basis. Did not love that. Also, this center armrest is very, very thinly padded with like a neoprene, but it's rock hard. It is not comfortable to rest your elbow on. It's just, yeah, it's not very comfortable, not very luxurious whatsoever. That could have used a little more padding. You know, spend a few extra pennies on that. I don't think that would have been money that was poorly spent. But anyway, this also, like I said, does not open up. So the only covered space you have is that little tray underneath here. And otherwise, though, you know, it's just kind of interesting. You do also have a glove box that drops down in the middle here, so I guess that's another spot. You also do have nice large pockets in the doors, but there is no actual cutout for a bottle. So just like a giant open space. Not going to hold a bottle very well, but you have space to put stuff at least, so there's that. Also in the doors, you will see no speakers. And up front here, the only speaker you have is this giant sound bar. It's a Harman Kardon sound bar, which is also another interesting choice. I'm happy to report that in this particular instance, it's an okay choice, because you do still have tiny little rear door speakers, so it isn't entirely front-based for the sound. I mean, those rear speakers are probably doing some heavy lifting to try and balance it out, but they do the job well, because this Harman Kardon stereo is fantastic. Really, really good. I was not expecting much, and I was floored. Especially stuff under 50 grand. This has got to be towards the top of the pack. Very, very well done. So, you know, that's one of those things where it's good to approach things with an open mind, because you might just be surprised. Another thing, though, is it's kind of another interesting choice. We have this giant chunk of metal for your door handle. I love that. I mean, it's very high quality and premium and feels like I'm in a luxury vehicle, but it's just like they spent how much money on this giant chunk of aluminum, and then, you know, they cheaped out on 2 plastic window switches, or, you know, a volume knob. I would have rather had a volume knob and window switches than this chunk of metal that feels like it weighs 5 pounds. I don't know. So again, just interesting choices as far as that goes. Now, as far as the back seat here in the Volvo, you know, being 2 inches shorter than a Volkswagen Golf, that's where you're going to pay that penalty, because you can see, first off, very narrow door opening there. And then once you do manage to get yourself in there, which, I mean, especially I did put a car seat back there, believe it or not, and it just barely even squeezed through the door opening. Like, it's not very kid friendly as far as that goes, and it's not very adult friendly because of how small the opening is. And once you do happen to be back there, I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have, like, you know, maybe 1.5 finger widths, you know, of space there. I mean, it's a soft rear, so you can, you know, knee your front driver there if you want, or front passenger, but, you know, there's just, it's a tight squeeze back there, unfortunately. Headroom, thankfully, is pretty good. You have this giant piece of glass, which is cool, and it is tinted, but there is no cover for it. There's no way to tint it otherwise, so another cost-cutting thing there. Just be mindful of that if you live in a sunny state. You know, there's no way to shield yourself from that unless you buy some aftermarket contraption to block it out. But otherwise, other interesting choices here. So you have no rear air vents. You know, I mean, it's a small car, but still, it'd be nice to have that. And like I said, you just have, you know, those 2 window switches. You have your 2 USB-C jacks. They do have pockets in those doors, but they also don't have any kind of bottle holder in there as far as the cutout. And there's no center armrest, so that means no cup holders. 0 rear cup holders or bottle holders in the back of this thing. Again, this is a luxury vehicle. It's expected to, you know, be perceived as such, but to be missing basic features that you get in a base level Corolla, you know, for below $20,000, you know, there's just only so much you can get away with. And it's not like it's even that cheap. If this were 25 grand, okay, I could, you know, deal with it. If it was 30 grand, okay, fine. You know, maybe at that 35 grand price point, if they get there eventually, you know, it could maybe be okay. But there is other stuff, you know, that's at that price point that has way more, and I'll get into that later in the video here. But just, I think they went too far in the cost cutting, and we'll see how the market responds to it. And I did actually put my daughter's car seat back there, but it wouldn't even fit behind me or my wife. So the only way it fit was putting it in the middle seat, so she had enough legroom, just putting it through in between the seats here. But that's how tight it is. So, you know, if you have a large car seat, or, you know, a larger kid in a car seat, you know, it might not fit great. And if you're in a booster or an infant seat, you know, it might work for those stages of parenthood, but that's about it. The last thing to mention is the trunk here. So the trunk also very small, especially because of how narrow this vehicle is. It just means that you don't have a lot of space there, and you can drop that, you know, floor there, so you can have a little bit of extra space, or you can have that compartment under there like you see for the charging cable, but it's not a lot back there either. And so let's just turn it on and go for a drive here. So the car's been running the whole time. It does this thing where they also, you guessed it, got rid of the start button to save money as well. So this has no start button. It guesses, you know, what you want to do, much like, you know, Teslas and others. And that was fine most of the time, but it did mean that this screen is, you know, always running every time I'm approaching the vehicle, even if I'm not getting into the vehicle. Like, I'd be walking past the vehicle in the garage, and if I had the key fob on me, it would wake up, or if you've used Phone's key, it'll wake up, connect to CarPlay and all that, and can kind of screw up if you've got headphones in or something. You know, it's always constantly wanting to run, and even, you know, if you don't walk far enough away from it, it doesn't auto lock, you know, and can have this stuff running for a while. It's just a little iffy. And, you know, you do have a fob, but it is a buttonless fob. So there are no buttons here on this. And, you know, it's just also kind of big for something with no buttons. But I'm happy to report, though, that this fob at least worked much better than the Polestar 3 that I had not too long ago. That was a horrible experience. Rivian also doesn't do a good job, in my opinion, with their fob. This is actually very well done, because there's still proximity sensors on the door, so you can still manually lock and unlock this vehicle from the outside without having to pull the fob out of your pocket. So I can walk up to this vehicle, grab the door handle to lock or unlock it. It also does the auto lock, again, this proximity based with walking away or walking up to the vehicle. But it worked flawlessly every single time this week. I didn't have to mess with any other, you know, solutions. You do also have this key card here, which you can keep as a backup, or, you know, just try and use that if you want. I don't know how well that works. I didn't bother, but, you know, I just keep the fob on you because it actually does work very well, and I'm very, very relieved to report that, because I thought it was going to be a nightmare getting into this vehicle every day, but thankfully it wasn't. So well done, Volvo, but still, a few pennies for a lock and unlock button on this would be nice, just to control that at a distance. You can use the app and, you know, lock it that way, but that usually, you know, takes a little bit of time. It's not instant. But anyway, you know, that is all standard. So keyless access, keyless entry, all that. But yeah, so you just hop in here, put your seatbelt on, put it in drive, and you're ready to go. All right, so setting off here in the Volvo EX30. So the first thing you noticed about this vehicle, the first thing that jumped out at me was the really interesting driving position you have. I mean, you are sitting it feels like you're just so close to the windshield, and you have excellent visibility, but I don't know, because the dashboard doesn't seem that short, and the hood isn't like that short, but like, I just felt like I was more immersed, and I felt like I was sitting like at the windshield, just because of just the excellent visibility you have. I don't know, it just really surprised me how I just had such good vision. You know, you have A-pillars that are nice and out of the way, and, you know, look pretty thin here, you know, whenever you are in the driver's seat. Really good visibility. You also have side mirrors that have some of the thinnest bezels I've seen in a production car. Really impressive there. View out of the back is pretty good in typical hatchback kind of fashion. Same kind of view there. You also here in the Ultra trim have a 360-degree camera and automatic parking. You do get park sensors as standard, but having, you know, the 360 camera is part of that very minor option package to go up to this Ultra. It's like $1,500 extra over the lower Plus trim. But other things, brakes are very nicely blended. It's very nice and easy to be smooth with them. Throttle response is also pretty good. So it's a little quicker, and, you know, again, this kind of gets into my confusion with who this car is for, because if this is just supposed to be a regular Volvo buyer that wants an entry-level Volvo, you know, this throttle might be a little too sensitive because this car feels like it wants to take off. I mean, obviously I can drive slowly easily, but it's just pretty sensitive with the ramp up of the performance there and the speed, even without having the performance mode on here. But you know, I'll talk more about that here in a minute. Another thing though that I really do love is the steering. The steering is nice and quick, and that combined with, again, feeling like I'm sitting on the front of the car almost, really gives this just very darty handling in a good way. I just felt like I was piloting a bubble almost, of just like, you know, unencumbered, just doing exactly what I wanted to do very easily, and it's really, really cool. Another thing that really shocked me was the quietness in here and the ride quality. I thought, you know, 19-inch wheels on this little car was going to be a rough ride, but thankfully you have a nice long wheelbase, and I don't know what they're doing with the sound deadening. Maybe that's where all the money went to instead of to the interior. I mean, it is way quieter than most other entry-level luxury vehicles by a long shot. It's really, really impressive. But I'm gonna go ahead and, again, dive into the sub-menu to turn on the sporty settings. Again, like 3 or 4 taps here. I'm gonna put the steering to firm, performance, all-wheel drive enabled. I'm gonna leave ESC on here, and we're also gonna turn off the lane keeping aid, because that's also something else that defaults to being on automatically. I don't love that. Every single time you got to dive in here if you don't want the lane keep on, and the lane keep's a little overreaching. We'll talk more about that later as well. But anyway, let's turn down onto this back road here and see how this thing accelerates. And here we go. This thing flies. There was a split second delay there, and then it's like, all right, he really wants it all, and then it gave it all to me. And man, this thing, I mean, the nose lifts up just because of the G-forces, and this thing flies. This is the quickest thing you can buy under $50,000. And if you would have, you know, told me, if I had time traveled here from the past, you told me in 2025 the fastest thing under 50 grand was a Volvo, I would have laughed at you and never believed you. But that is the reality. I mean, we are living in insane times, but even that I didn't expect. That was not on my bingo card for 2025 here, but yes, this is the fastest thing under 50 grand. And so you get dual all-wheel drive here, dual motors. It does 422 horsepower combined, 400 pound-feet of torque, and Volvo claims a 3.4 seconds 0 to 60. Car and Driver got 3.3 seconds though for this thing. 3.3 seconds. That's what a Lamborghini Murcielago got back in the day. And you're getting that for under $50,000 in this cute little Volvo. It's, you know, it's truly insane. But yeah, this will embarrass any muscle car under 50 grand. This will embarrass everything that, you know, has the pretense of being fast. This will clobber it by a long shot. Like basically everything else is like, you know, maybe under 4 seconds if you're lucky, like a Golf R possibly, but nothing touches this. And now this road that I'm on, it usually generates a lot of road noise here, and in this, you know, you hear some road noise. It's not, you know, Rolls-Royce quiet, but it's actually really nice and quiet in here. I'm very impressed, again, with the refinement. Was not expecting that, especially with all the cost cutting. You know, the fact this thing is so quiet just really boggles my mind. But we're coming up with some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the EX30 handles. So, it does okay. Now, I will say it does like to push in the front end, and it does, you know, tend to understeer, even though we do have a rear bias all-wheel drive system. The rear motor is more powerful than the front one by over 100 horsepower. So you do get more power in the rear, and we can try and power out of the corner here. But yeah, it really wants to push. I mean, it does try to be neutral and favor that rear motor once it sees that it's starting to push, but it's just more of a reactionary system. It doesn't have the inherent goodness of being perfectly neutral. It's like, uh-oh, we're not neutral, let's correct that, and it's always doing that process. Now, the main downfall of this car handling wise is the tires. It has Michelin Primacy all-season tires that are just 245 wide. I would love to drive one of these with actual sticky summer tires on them, and maybe even slightly wider tires, because this thing, I think, is just one tire upgrade away from being an amazing hot hatch. You know, because you have the nice long wheelbase. Again, you got a rear biased all-wheel drive system. Obviously, you know, you don't have any kind of crazy adaptive dampers. You don't have any kind of other tricks going going on here. But actually, there is another EX30. I did not expect to see another one around here. It's the first other one I've actually seen aside from this one. But another acceleration. Here we go. It is fast, and I mean, these days also 422 horsepower might not, you know, make you fall out of your chair because everything's just so high horsepower anymore. But in a vehicle this small and this light, it is impressive, because that's the other thing. Because it only has a 64 kilowatt hour battery, this thing only weighs like under 4,200 pounds. And accelerating up the hill now. Okay, it actually dug in the back end there. It did work with me. This is the first time I've actually driven this car hard, because I always want to preserve my first reaction for camera here. So it's doing better. I have noticed though at lower speeds, when I haven't had the performance all-wheel drive system on, you know, it does want to push more. But thankfully, when you have that mode on, it is a lot more neutral. So that's great. Still desperately need tires. As you can hear the tires protesting. They do not like doing this. But it does make this a little more slidey though, you know, low grip. I mean, these are the same kinds of tires they put on Subaru BRZs to make those, you know, tail happier. But man, this thing is, yeah, it's great. It is so good. This is not just the typical EV that's fast in a straight line and that's it. It does handle. It really does. Yeah. This is, I mean, again, there's a lot of shortcomings on the interior and stuff. But to have this much performance for under 50 grand, this is a real hidden performance bargain that probably almost no one's going to know about, and everyone's going to sleep on this. But you should not sleep on it, especially if you're open to EVs. I mean, because we're talking about something that is almost really as fast as a Hyundai Ioniq 5N. You just don't have all that car's character and fun and buttons and and a wide variety of other things. But you know, it's kind of like that level of performance for 20 grand less. And, you know, in that kind of a context, you know, again, this is this secret hot hatch that I never expected from Volvo. Now, as far as the battery info, these run a 64 kilowatt hour battery. Volvo claims a range of 253 miles. That seems optimistic. Even on 100% charge, the best it was telling me was 220-ish miles of range. And in my observed driving here, it might be a little bit less than even that. I think Car and Driver got something like 165, 170 miles out of a charge doing just strict highway driving at 75 miles per hour. So, you know, range is not great, but that goes for any performance EV. I mean, same problem with Ioniq 5N right now. And so, you know, just one thing to keep in mind there. Now, recharge speeds are also not as fast. That's one thing Hyundai has going for it, is fast recharge speeds. The peak DC charge rate is 153 kilowatt hours, and that's, you know, average, but unremarkable. They say 10% to 80% charge takes about 27 minutes or so. And merging onto the highway here. Oh wait, we've caught up to traffic. It's that fast. And I will go ahead and put it out of all those modes here and just kind of calm down now. I do like this firm steering feel though. I think that's actually a nice, but it's interesting. You instantly feel, car's nagging me, I'll get into that in a second, but you instantly feel the less throttle response once you go out of that performance mode, which is interesting. But anyway, so merging onto the highway here, we're going to put on the Pilot Assist system, which is, you know, their combination of adaptive cruise control combined with lane keep assist. Now, as standard, all of these do have, you know, automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and regular adaptive cruise control, all as standard here in these. So you don't have to pay anything extra for that. Now, the only things you do have to pay extra for are, again, the Pro Pilot thing, which pairs the adaptive cruise with the steering assist. Otherwise, you'll just have a corrective system instead of the like more guided thing you have here with the Pilot system. And then again, that also gives you that 360 camera, and like rear auto brake are the other things you get in that Ultra trim. But now I do have that Pilot Assist system on here, and one nice thing about this screen is that it does display, you know, the cars around you and the road lines that it is seeing. It visualizes all that, just like again in a Tesla, and so that's really nice to have. And you know, it's good to have that extra communication. And so, you know, this system, it does do a really good job of staying within the lines and being very adamant and very tight with the steering, so it doesn't wander. And I am going to try it out here. We have this gentle corner we're going around. I'm kind of letting it do most of the steering. We do have cars around us though, so I'm very carefully babysitting it to make sure. And okay, now it is sawing at the wheel a little bit. I think because the really direct sunlight there was kind of disguising the road lines a little bit. It is a little harder to see, I will admit, so a little bit of an extra challenge here today. But it still stayed in the lines like it should. So, you know, Volvo obviously very much focused on safety, and as a result, this is a very safe feeling system. It does give me a lot of confidence. But in also somewhat typical Volvo, you know, decision making, it is very overcorrective and very much adamant on being extremely safe, to the point where this driver monitoring sensor is automatically defaulted to being on again at every key cycle, just like lane keep assist. Both of those things you have to every single time go in and, you know, turn off lane keep assist if you don't want it, turn off the driver monitoring thing if you don't want it. And the driver monitoring thing, it's kind of funny because it doesn't like it when I look over at the center screen. Even for a few seconds, it'll start nagging me. I mean, it was nagging me when I was just setting my cruise control speed because I got to look over here at this. And it's like, you designed it this way, Volvo. Don't yell at me because I'm looking where I have to look in order to see if I'm actually doing what I need to do with the vehicle. I would be looking for it if I had a gauge cluster, but I'm not. So that's annoying. The other thing about the driver monitoring sensor is it hates when you yawn. Every single time I yawn in this vehicle, it gives me a little ding ding, maybe you should take a break. And it's like, I'm good, it's the middle of the afternoon, I'm just a little tired because I'm hitting the mid-afternoon slump and I'm yawning. But like, it's basically every single time I yawn. I mean, there was one afternoon where I was especially, you know, tired, and I yawned like 5 times in a row, and it did the nagging on the first one, and on the 5th one, it let me go for a few after, you know, in the middle there. But, you know, this is the very first yawn of your drive. It's like, what are you doing? Go to sleep. It's like, no, like, I'm just yawning. Like, I am tired a little bit, but not so tired that I can't safely drive a car. So, you know, those types of things, again, if I could turn it off and leave it off, it's harmless. But the fact that I got every single time go multiple taps into the screen on every drive to turn that off, otherwise it's nagging at me for yawning, is ridiculous. So again, just too far, you know, in the safety direction, in my opinion. It's, you know, good intentions, but it just, again, seems like it was programmed by someone who only thinks in binary terms and has no gray area in their thinking, because it's just like, I don't need to be nagged every single time I yawn. Anyway, otherwise out on the highway, you know, like I said, it's a great cruiser and it does a really good job. Another thing though that is very good about the EX30 here is its efficiency. So over my driving here, I've done over 160 miles of driving here this week. My average has been about 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour, which is very impressive. I mean, it is the summertime here, you know, so that certainly helps, but that's really pretty top notch, especially for something with all-wheel drive. Now, the all-wheel drive system does disconnect, so you only need that those front motors whenever, you know, you are in a low traction kind of situation. Otherwise, it's just defaulting to rear-wheel drive. But still, I mean, even for, you know, an intelligently disconnecting system, I mean, it is really impressive to be getting that kind of efficiency. That's also just partially because of, again, the nice light weight of this vehicle, the small size. Those things certainly, you know, pay big dividends, and so that is great, even though, you know, again, it doesn't give you great range, but it allows you to have that smaller battery, that lighter weight, which is great. But the last thing to mention here, though, is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So let's get into that. So the EX30 starts at $46,195 for now, until that single motor variant comes someday, and this one, as tested, is $48,395. And even being fully loaded, it is a good value compared to other Volvos, at least, with the next step up being the EX40 that's only 8 inches longer and is a whopping $62,000 with comparable features. But if you want to get the best price possible for an EX30, or any vehicle for that matter, you're definitely going to head over to maranmotoring.com and go to the new car quotes page. There you'll get access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as getting connected to a local dealer so you can check out the EX30 for yourself and see what you think about it. So there's going to be a link in the description, as well as one in a pinned comment to take you straight to that site and get you all that info. Now, as far as how it compares to the competition, if your criteria are entry-level EVs from a luxury brand, there's really no one else that has something in this segment yet other than Mini with their Countryman SE. A comparable one is about $2,000 more expensive and does even less range and much less power, but it is bigger and more practical. So that might be a good alternative if you don't need this much performance but want something quirky still. Otherwise though, if you're open to mainstream brands, stuff like the Chevy Equinox EV and the Ford Mustang Mach-E are right around the same price while giving you over 300 miles of range, way more space, cooled seats, gauges, bigger screens, and even hands-free highway driving with Super Cruise and Blue Cruise. And just about everything in that compact EV crossover segment will be a better value basically. But none of them will be as fast. And that's the conundrum that Volvo has put this car in. Its tiny size and cost cutting will likely be a non-starter for many people, especially those that don't appreciate the performance. So really, I think the only strong argument for this car right now is as a hot hatch. A budget Ioniq 5N or Blazer EV-SS, for those that can live with the tiny size and the quirks of the Volvo. But that's an extremely small slice of buyers, and until that single motor version comes, I sadly don't think this car will sell very well here, as fun as it is. I hope I'm wrong, I hope it does great, because I do really love it, but it just doesn't seem like it's a recipe for success, especially these days with EVs being less incentivized than before. But if you're shopping for a car and would like some advice, I now do one-on-one car advice calls as well, where I can help you figure out what car would fit your needs and wants the best. So if you'd like some advice, I'd love to help. Head over to mattmoranmotoring.com and book a call today.
But yeah, so overall, the EX30, it's really cool. I'm not sure who it's for, but I'm happy it exists. I hope that some people, latch onto it. I think it's really cool that Volvo beat Volkswagen to an electric hot hatch. And, I'm excited to, see hopefully again that rear-wheel drive version at some point down the road, but that still excludes this from every snowy state, where stuff like the Equinox EV having front-wheel drive, again, is going to probably make it a better seller. So, even if they do come out with a $35,000 version someday, is it still going to be competitive outside of the Sunbelt? I don't know, but I'm just happy this exists, even if I'm not sure who exactly it's for. I personally love it, and some of you also who appreciate crazy performance in a fun, quirky package, if you're willing to put up with the odd choices here on the inside and the other quirks of this vehicle, it is certainly unique and certainly will probably be rare. And for that reason alone, it does have some appeal for sure. I mean, Volvo is also, again, very safety minded, and I'm sure this vehicle is going to be very good as far as crash safety and all that as well. And from that standpoint, could win out some people that maybe want something that's faster than a Golf R and safer than a Golf R, if you're again willing to deal with a smaller back seat. But yeah, overall, I love this thing, and I wasn't expecting to love this. I can confidently say here in, August of 2025, this is the biggest surprise of the year for me so far. And, I was not expecting to fall in love with this car this week, especially because of all the strange choices on the inside and all the cost cutting. Those things are annoying, but because this thing is so fun to drive and just really cool in my opinion, I really love this. It makes a strong case for itself, honestly. And, if I wanted something that was, again, top-notch safety, a ton of fun, under $50,000 that was also electric, this is a really, really cool option, especially, again, you put some better tires on this. I really actually like this, and I did not think I would like it that much. And, after a week with this thing, it's a vehicle I would be open to owning myself, honestly. It's really, I'm surprised I'm saying that myself, but I really just was so impressed with this thing. And so I think Volvo did a very good job. Again, just put a few more buttons in here, bring some common sense to the interior a little bit more, and then I think this thing is actually going to be, just even better. So we'll see what happens maybe in a mid-cycle refresh or something. But in the meantime, absolutely love this thing. And so yeah, huge thanks to you guys for watching. Huge thanks to Volvo for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and take care.